The next question, walk in the room and discuss when honesty is not the best policy. Hi guys, how are y'all? Welcome to the live MMI webinar. I'm Savanna. I'm a dermatology PA in Georgia, and then I also coach at the PA platform and created the PA platform as a way to help people find out about our profession and find out more about the application process. As I was going through it myself, I realized there's a lot of moving parts, and even though I was at UGA, which is a big school, my advisor just wasn't really familiar with the PA profession. But I have a very strange passion for helping people figure out what they want to do. And I really love talking about being a PA. So that all came together into the PA platform. And now I've been doing this for the past 10 years. And it's a lot of fun getting to meet with you guys. We have a bunch of coaches now who also help and getting to celebrate with you when you get accepted. So I'm hoping a lot of these interviews y'all are sharing will turn into acceptances that you can then let us know about later on. So MMI can be a little bit of a strange format, and we'll get into some of that. I'm going to do a little bit more of an overview at the beginning than we normally do, just because some people may not be familiar with what multiple mini interviews are. So I'll make sure that's very clear. And then we will get into some practice with our volunteers. One of our volunteers is having some car trouble, so we'll see if she makes it in. If not, we'll definitely adjust a few housekeeping things. If for some reason your internet messes up or something, or it seems glitchy, refresh and try Google Chrome. We found that works the best. And then we do have a mock interview discount code. So you'll see a little taste of what mock interviews look like here tonight, but our coaches will do mock interviews one-on-one with you, where you practice either general stuff or specifically for your program or whichever schools you're interviewing at. And that discount code is last minute. That will get you set up for a mock interview. So if you've been thinking about scheduling, make sure you check out that code, because that is a special code for y'all. The other exciting thing, does anyone know what tomorrow starts? October 6th. Anybody know? If you've been following PA stuff for a while or following me on social media, you have probably seen that October 6th, yes, is PA week. So we get a whole week. We don't even just get a day. We get October 6th through 12th. I'm not sure who decided that, because it's actually a lot of work, but I'll take it. So PA week starts tomorrow, and that means we have a ton of stuff planned. I'm very excited about our giveaways this year. I've not announced them anywhere yet, so I'll tell y'all, since you can have a little sneak peek. We have a registration for a certification program from Capier, where you can get your online MA certification. That is worth a lot and extremely valuable. So make sure you're following us on Instagram and TikTok, and so that you can take part in these giveaways. We will have a pair of tennis shoes, specifically a pair of On Clouds. I have put together a skincare giveaway with something also really cool that I'm hoping comes in tomorrow so that I can include it. If you know what my cardigan is, you might have an idea of what that could be. And then, of course, some stuff from the PA platform. Lots of our books going out, mock interviews, services, all kinds of stuff all week long, all for the pre-PAs and those that y'all aren't PAs yet. We want to make sure that you can take part in these giveaways as well and be excited about PA week. So it's a great week to thank your mentors and just reflect on why you're here and why you're doing this. 11 years later, love my job, don't regret it at all, and can confidently say I think you're making a great decision in choosing to pursue the PA profession. All right, let's talk about MMI for just a moment before we bring up our first volunteer. MMI is an interesting format. There is a chapter about it in the PA School Interview Guide. We've done other webinars on it. Earlier in the summer, Avery, who is our Pre-PA Academy TA, did a fantastic webinar specifically on MMI, and she is someone who had extreme success with interviewing last cycle. She's in PA school now, and she put all of her wisdom into this. So if you're like, I need more, I want more help with it, go to YouTube, watch those, or just look up the PA platform MMI, and some of that stuff will come up. So MMI can be done in a very traditional way, and this is multiple mini interviews. So this is something that med schools have been doing for a long time, and so PA schools have jumped on that bandwagon and said, okay, this is a good way of interviewing that looks at a lot of different things, qualities about the applicant. So we're looking for empathy, compassion, problem solving, critical thinking. The questions and the stations are designed in a way to try to get an idea of all of those things. So in a very traditional MMI, you will have a few stations, 5 to 7 to 10, whatever, 5 to 10 stations where you alternate through with other applicants. Traditionally, you would go to a station, have a prompt or something written out that will give you a couple minutes to think about it. So usually there's about 2 minutes that you'll use to think, and then you'll have 5 to 7 minutes to respond to that prompt. Again, traditionally, in a very traditional MMI, there will be an interviewer present, but they will not interact with you. They will not speak to you. They are not going to respond. They're just someone there observing, so that they're not necessarily you're not having a conversation. You're more just going in, answering, and then when you're done, you either sit there in silence or you're able to get up and leave. So again, that's very traditional. What I have found with doing this for many years, and y'all are welcome to share your experiences of what your MMIs have been like as well, is that some PA programs will label their interviews as MMI, but truly it's just stations with a more traditional interview style or questions where you are more conversational with the interviewer, or they're asking you more just like typical interview stuff. So when we're practicing for MMI, if you do a mock interview and you have MMI, which by the way, if you ever sign up for a mock interview, feel free to put as much like stuff that you want to specifically work on in your sign up, and we will try to focus on that as much as possible. But for MMI and just all interviews, typically we are still going to focus on some traditional questions because oftentimes those do come up in an MMI, even if it is that kind of different format. The other thing that's a little bit difficult to do virtually is the timing of it. And of course, in an MMI or in a mock interview, we want to make the most of your time. So usually what I'll do and what we'll do tonight, and I'll explain in a minute, is I have my phone here as a timer. I can't see that because it's a green screen, but I have my phone here. It's a timer. And so I will try to keep time of where we're at. And oftentimes I'll say the prompt, or like if I'm on Zoom or Google Chat, I'll put it in the chat and say, tell me when you're ready. Just go ahead and start, to give that person as much time as they want to work on it. And then they can answer, respond, and then we'll move on. So then we wait till the end and talk about them. So that's kind of what we'll go through tonight, but I will just say those questions out loud so that you guys can all hear them. And then the person can think about it and answer when they are ready. So we'll focus on more of a traditional format with a variation of questions. Sound good? All right. All right, we got some more interviews coming up. Cool. All right, I'm going to bring our first volunteer to the stage if she is ready. Hi.
Hello.
How are you?
Good. How are ya?
Good. Now I want to make sure I'm pronouncing your name right. Kennedy?
Yeah, you got it.
Perfect. Perfect. Want to make sure. Okay, I have some questions ready. And you've had one interview? Is
Yep,
that
one
right?
so far, and then I have two more scheduled right now.
Awesome. How did the first one go?
I feel like the first one went well. It was honestly really fun. I liked the in-person, like most of the day interview. It
Yeah.
was fun because they had a breakfast at the beginning where we could all show up and you got to just like chit chat. And then it wasn't as stressful because you felt like you were just friends with everybody there. So I thought it was really fun, and I feel like it was a really great experience to prep for other interviews as well.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good perspective. I think if you can go into it thinking like, oh, this is fun, or like, these could be my classmates, you
For
do
sure.
maybe enjoy it a little bit more. I don't know that the nerves will be completely gone, but that first one out too, after you get it under your belt, it makes it so much easier to go into the next one with just a little bit of expectation. But yes, thank
Yes.
you for volunteering tonight and congrats on so many
For
interview
me.
invites. That's impressive. We really love that. And we'll jump into some questions. We'll do a variety of kind of some different types and then we will stop and talk about them. Is there anything specific that you want to work on?
I don't know if there's anything specific. Generally, my biggest concern is just how long I talk for. I'm a chatty person, so sometimes I worry if my answers are a little bit too long or rambly. So
Okay.
that's the main thing I'm wanting to work on right now.
Okay. Yeah, good to know. All right, let me get my timer up. Stopwatch is ready. Okay. And don't worry, we won't get too crazy with these. I don't think. Maybe we'll see. And if anyone wants to throw out any questions in the chat, I'll try to incorporate some of those themes too if there's anything y'all think we should ask. Okay. So go ahead and pretend you're walking in the room. Introduce yourself, express why you want to be a PA and what you are looking for in a PA program.
Hello, my name is Kennedy Sayer. I'm from Pocatello, Idaho. I spent my childhood growing up in mostly small towns in Idaho and Utah, where I fell in love with the outdoors, so I spent a lot of time hiking, camping, fishing. I married my high school sweetheart. We met in high school speech and debate for nerds. We have an Australian Shepherd puppy who goes on all my outdoor adventures with me, and I love arts and crafts. I just started a calligraphy and glass engraving business to save up some money for PA school. Outside of my kind of like personal life, I really have just always loved healthcare. When I was 2 years old, my mom brought me to her OB-GYN appointment when she was pregnant with my little brother. And Dr. Gurley, which I think is the funniest name for an obstetrician, was just the coolest guy. And he explained her pregnancy to me in like little kid terms. And ever since then, I've been obsessed. I have always known I wanted to go into healthcare. That's meandered a little bit though on what specifically I wanted to do until the last few years when I've known pretty confidently I wanted to be a PA. I just love the problem solving that comes with diagnosis and treatment plans for patients and evaluating that aspect. So I knew I wanted to be a provider of some sort who could study and work with the entire human body. For me, that kind of narrowed it down to PA, nurse practitioner, or physician. I grew up in a family with no healthcare providers, though, so I didn't know NPs or PAs were a thing until a few years ago. I had considered the physician route, but I just have so many interests and I'm drawn in so many different directions. And so feeling like I was sticking to one specialty was something that made me really hesitant about pursuing the physician path as well as a few other things. And then I learned about PAs freshman year of college. I worked in urgent care as a receptionist where most of our providers were PAs. And I was like, oh, this is cool. You get to do all the things I wanted to do, and you can work in an urgent care. Some had worked in the ER before, some had done women's health, some had done mental health. And seeing that they brought all of those things they learned from previous specialties into the current setting was really cool and really appealing to me. One PA, Amber, also told me about the profession when I worked there. She told me that PAs help to expand access to care, which I thought was really cool. My speech and debate background, I've always been passionate about like equity and social justice. So I was like, oh, that's exciting. And then at the last few years, I've been able to actually see that firsthand. So I have volunteered at the Pocatello Free Clinic, where I worked with Paula and Cindy, a couple of PAs who do a wonderful job of meeting our patients where they're at and helping them overcome health disparities. And seeing that has really highlighted those are things I want to do as well, and that the PA profession would allow me to do that. I've also worked out in the Shoshone-Bannock Community Health Center. We're a HRSA clinic on the Fort Hall Native American Reservation, where I work with nurse practitioners who also help to expand access to care and overcome barriers. So I've known those are things I want to do. For me, it's been PA specific since I just prefer the educational route. I like using the medical model and going really like disease science focused while still getting to work as an advanced practice provider in that collaborative setting. Program looking for things that mirror rooming to the PA profession. I like PA programs that have an emphasis on community service and community engagement and patient empowerment. And those are things that I've really found in the programs that I've applied to.
Okay. All right, next question. If you are the captain of a sports team and you have just found out that a member of your team is not qualified to play in the final game with the team, how would you go about breaking the news to them?
I have to put myself in these shoes because there's not an athletic bone in my body, so this is not a situation I've ever been in. This is tricky because obviously, if I'm in a leadership position on this team, then I have to do what's best for the team while approach the situation gently and taking into account my teammates' feelings and their emotions. I think it depends in part on why they're not qualified. Did they have a recent injury that disqualifies them for health reasons? Did they partake in specific substances that aren't allowed for participating in the tournament that we're going to? Once I understand that background, I think that can influence how I approach it, whether I'm talking to them, hey, I recognize that you really want to participate. We love you as a team member and we would love you to be there, but for your own health and well being, it's not safe to have you participate. I could provide options in which they are able to still help celebrate with the team, assign duties to make them feel like they're still being involved, whether that's helping to pack for the tournament or ways that they can support team members from the sidelines and assign them duties so that they still feel involved and like they're participating even if they can't actually participate directly in the sport. If they had violated some sort of guidelines, have a conversation with them about how same things of how we want them to still feel included and how they can still participate in some minimal degrees, but also talk about things we can do going forward so that they can get back to where they want to be, communicate with that team member about how what steps need to be taken so we don't encounter this again in the future. And that way they overall feel seen. I would listen to the questions and concerns that they have while also standing firm on the rules and the reasons they aren't able to participate while ultimately still allowing them to feel some sort of sense of community and participation with the team.
Okay. Sorry, I'm taking notes. If I'm like looking over here, it's because I'm writing things down. All right. All right, the next question. Walk in the room and discuss when honesty is not the best policy.
I think that this is a tricky one since, as a general rule of thumb, honesty is the best policy. I think the only situations in which, especially in like a healthcare setting, honesty directly isn't is especially when you're working with patients with an altered mental status. Say I'm working with a sweet granny who has dementia and she's telling me, "Oh, I'm just waiting for my husband. I can't leave this bench. My husband's coming back from the farm any minute." That's not a moment for me to tell her, hey, your husband's not on his way. He passed away 5 years ago, and make her relive that situation and all of her grief. That wouldn't be kind or compassionate thing to do to a patient or anybody in that situation. So I think in moments like that, when somebody isn't fully aware of reality, there are moments in which it may be okay to accept some of the things that aren't based in reality for the sake of compassion and empathy. Generally, though, in the way that I carry myself in my interpersonal relationships and professionalism and working with patients, even when it's difficult or uncomfortable, honesty is the best policy. If you make a mistake at work, if you administer a vaccine that expired 3 days ago and you didn't catch it, that's a moment when you need to be honest with the patient. You go talk to a supervisor, you're honest with the patient. If something gets mislogged or mischarted, it's really important to have integrity in which you are honest with the people who are involved in that. Or even if something just might potentially be a sensitive subject and hurt somebody's feelings, but it needs to be said, it's important to be honest with patients about their healthcare, team members about situations that are going on, and carry that honesty and integrity throughout your work so that everybody can make like decisions that are based in reality and truth instead of having important information withheld from them.
Okay. All right. Next question. If you were any type of car, what would you be and why?
Ooh. So I actually used to work at Leshwell Tire Center, like a mechanic shop, all of high school, so I have strong feelings on cars. A little unconventional, but there was this pickup truck I used to drive when I worked at Les Schwab. We named him Pepe. I think he was a little like Chevy Colorado. So it was a pickup truck, which I think is fun since they're like strong and there's a lot you can do with a pickup truck, but it's still like tiny and compact for a pickup. I like to think that I am small but mighty, and so I really resonate with that. I also think that being in a Pepe style vehicle would be fun because not only do I have the strength to haul boats and toys and help people go out and explore the world in the ways they want to, but it's still like manageable sized and stays true to who I am.
Okay. Oh, I got off track. Let's see. You are working as a PA. You are seeing a patient for the first time. It's a new patient. And they tell you that they are taking a friend's medication and they would like for you to prescribe this for them. How do you address that situation?
We see situations like this quite a bit at the clinic that I'm working at, whether it's a patient taking their spouse's medication or their daughter's medication for whatever reason. I really like medication working in healthcare. That's my duty, especially once I become a PA and I have more information to be able to educate my patients. I think in this moment I would sit down and just use as an option for patient education. I would ask my patient, hey, what are you taking this for? Acne or heart issues that they think they have. I would take that moment to explain the importance of having directly. At times, patients who aren't involved in healthcare forget that there are risks and side effects with prescription medications. That's why they're not over the counter. And being able to explain that to them, as well as for that specific medication, walk through what some of those risks and concerns are. If it's a medication that would be appropriate for patients, and that we could evaluate what questions they have, make the appropriate labs have been obtained, their vitals, assess all of that. I could prescribe that medication and then remind them the importance of not sharing medications with others or taking medications prescribed for people because of the health risks, but reassure them that if they in the future that their or their wife available in our office, schedule an appointment, and then we can get some of those health concerns and appropriate treatment for their circumstances.
Okay. All right. Actually, I'll do this one. Tell me about a time that you felt overwhelmed. How did you handle it and what strategies did you use to get through it?
I like this question because the way I handle situations now is vastly different than it was a few years ago. I used to be endearingly called my husband's little stress ball or little ball of stress because I just would get so worked up about things and I had no stress coping mechanisms and I would blow up and then I'd reset and it would go over. And it just was not a healthy cycle. A few years ago, 3 years ago now, I developed Crohn's disease, which symptoms get worse when I'm stressed out. And so I very quickly realized the importance of managing my stress because stress isn't good for your health, but now I just had physical results of that. And that has really helped me in moments when I get overwhelmed. I like to break down the feeling of stress or overwhelm down into anxiety and motivation. The sense of anxiety from stress isn't helpful for me. I can just ignore that and focus on the motivation I should be drawing from it. Having that mindset shift has really been helpful for me in moments when I've been overwhelmed. I was really proud of myself actually this last semester. I graduated in May, and about month or so into my last spring semester, I was filing for graduation, checked to make sure ducks were in a row, and I had somehow missed one credit in some small niche part of my concentration, and it looked like I wasn't going to graduate. And in the past, I would have had a complete breakdown over this, but instead, I turned on some music, I had a little dance party in my kitchen, blew off some steam, sat down, and then I took that motivation and I emailed my professors, I emailed my advisor, I got in contact with the dean for my department, figured out what we needed to do. Because I was able to focus on that motivation, I didn't have a breakdown at all. Instead, I was able to get late registered for molecular biology. I had 5 weeks of molecular biology and 2 exams to get caught up on, which was rather difficult, but I found a lot of pride and like a sense of accomplishment after all of that was done, just in the way that I had handled the situation. And I know that these are skills I'll be able to carry with me into PA school, into the PA profession, when I have a lot on my plate and those feelings of being overwhelmed come up. I've developed the mindset and the tools to be able to adequately take care of that.
Okay. All right, we'll do one more. It's a hard choice. Okay, I like these type. Okay, enter the room, pretend you're entering the room, and all the supplies are there. Instruct the person there how to make a bowl of cereal.
Ooh. Okay, I'm gonna assume that there's all good for making and preparing cereal. Cereal, if it's unopened, to have them find the end of the cereal box as a tab that can be tucked back in once it's in and have them open the box. There, cut the top of the cereal bag off, have them the cereal pours into the bowl so that to halfway full, then have them grab their milk, unscrew the cap off, grab the handle on the milk, pour them so that you fill until the milk fills the bowl enough that the cereal has lifted to the top of the bowl, just over once the spoon by the handle, stick the end of the spoon into the bowl, and then their bowl of cereal is ready to be eaten.
Okay. All right. All right, let's stop there and we'll talk through some of this. Our other volunteer, her car troubles are preventing her from being here, which is fine. That's why we kept going a little bit longer. Yeah, we'll figure. Yeah, she like emailed was like, I'll be there in 20 minutes. And she was like, I won't be here.
What
So we'll make sure.
tragic!
Yeah, it's totally fine though. We made it work. Okay, great job, everyone. And okay, so I'm gonna go to the feedback here. So everyone said doing great, crushing it. Yes. Okay. How do you feel?
A few of the questions stumped me a little bit. The sports team one, especially, I was like, oh, I don't know what to say here. I feel like I could have added more examples in. Most of the things that I answered, I had like specific examples for in life that I just didn't throw into my answer, which was a
Okay.
wasted opportunity. But the
Yeah.
overall moral of the story for my questions, I am okay with.
Okay. Okay. That's a good takeaway. Sorry, grab some water. I think you'll be potentially surprised at some of the links. So your longest answer was 3 minutes and 37 seconds. Does that surprise you or not really?
Honest, was that the first one?
Huh?
A little bit, because I feel like I was talking for 5 minutes on the first one.
Right? Yeah, so that's why like I always will
Okay.
say time yourself. Like when you're practicing, nobody wants to listen to themselves. I'm not saying you have to go back in video and listen to yourself, which is a great tool, but I don't watch my videos back, so you don't have to either. But yeah, so most of the time it feels like you're talking forever and ever, and it's truly not. So
Yes.
I would say in these cases, especially 5 minutes is a long time. It's a very long time. And so that was your longest
Yes.
answer. So that does leave you on the flip side, you're on one side, you're like, oh my gosh, that's so long. Like, how am I going to talk that long? But on the other side, those things you just mentioned of I did have some stories I could add or whatever, you have time and you have room
Yes.
if you're in an MMI setting. If you're in a
Okay.
traditional setting, it's a little different. You do want to keep answers a little bit more concise so that you can move on to other stuff. But
In a traditional setting versus MMI, how long would you say the answer should be?
I think still don't really believe in putting a limit on them. I think if you're providing new information and you're building on what you're talking about and not just rambling. I like at the beginning when you said were worried about rambling, I didn't get a sense of you rambling. There were a couple of times where I feel like you started to take your answer in one direction, trying to find the way you were going, and then corrected back on track. And that's fine. That to me shows me that you're not just reciting an answer that you've planned and that you're actually just talking.
Okay.
So I don't have an issue with that. Around 2 minutes is fine. The hardest part
Okay.
in a traditional interview, and I don't think you necessarily had an issue with this, but something I find when we're practicing is just stopping and just realizing that if you stop, they're going to ask another question. And it's okay to just be done.
Hmm.
Because I think our tendency is to just keep going and talking to whatever. Like you can just be done. And I do feel like as we went, you got more comfortable. And I could just tell that in kind of your answers and how you're responding and your use of kind of filler words and stuff. One thing for everyone watching, the hard parts of an MMI to practice in this setting, if we're doing a mock interview, are skits and scenarios. So some of these questions I asked, they could very well be things where they're like, hey, Kennedy, go in this room, and that player that you have to tell can't play, they're sitting there and you're actually having that conversation with them. I will say I've
Okay.
tried to role play it over Zoom or virtual, and I think I find it so weird. It's very odd. I don't really do that a
That's
lot.
fair.
Or you'll have a mad parent or someone that you're
Uh-huh.
actually interacting with as if you were in that situation. So that can happen. The other thing that I think is hard to simulate is how MMI works in that you will have interactions with multiple people and different people. And we're playing with a way to see if there's a way that we can do this like in a more formal setting so it is more realistic. Because I think one of the parts is hard is if you get stumped on a station. If there's one that's very difficult for you that just throws you off and you just aren't sure what to do, you have to be able to shake it off really quickly and move on
Yeah.
between stations. And the thing I tell people is just that if you were stumped, if you felt confused or unsure, someone else did too. Probably everyone else. It probably wasn't just you. And so just know, okay, that wasn't my station, moving on. And you've got to be able to get out of your head about it so that you can keep going. So if that's you have a tough interviewer, you're like, oh my gosh, they didn't like me, I did terrible, that was in that station, and then you go to the next one and it's a whole, they're almost like separate interviews that you have to
Right.
be able to adjust to. So that's like a little bit of how to think about it. So some people are asking about scenario and structure, so we'll get into some of that. And these are some tough questions. I think it's so funny. One day I was doing a mock interview and my husband overheard me and he was like, what are you asking? What are these questions? These are terrible questions. Why are you asking this? And I was like, all of these questions are ones that have been asked at real PA school interviews. Like I have a very
No.
and I'm like, these 100%,
Uh-huh.
these are real questions. Like, I didn't make them up. PA schools did. I
Yeah.
don't blame.
Yes.
So
Expect the unexpected.
expect the unexpected, be ready for anything, and let's get into it and we'll talk through these. All right. So number one, I like this question of just tell me about yourself. So that first question I said, introduce yourself, tell me why PA, tell me what you're looking for in a program.
That was a lot in one question. It took me by surprise.
So this is a very purposeful thing. I actually had somebody this cycle, I get mad at one of our interviewers for asking her this in a mock interview. She's like, that's a traditional question. I was like, it is, but it often comes up in an MMI. And it also helps you practice a very important thing, which is many of these questions in this format will have multiple parts.
Hmm.
And so part of what they are looking for is that you answer all of the parts. So part of that is that you recognize the different parts of the question and that you pace yourself so that you have enough time to answer all the
Right.
parts of that question. And again, in MMI, you may have time to prepare. You may have, usually you'll have a couple minutes to think through, organize your thoughts, gather things together in your head. I know Avery, our TA, talks about it. She had she was able to take notes for some of them and organize them that way and give herself a little quick outline of what she wanted to cover. Just feel out the situation. They're going to give you instructions. You may or may not know those instructions prior to the interview. It may happen when you're there, but they'll direct you on what to do. They're not just going to throw you out and just kind of let you fly. Yes. So, yes, I thought you answered every part of this. This is one where you kind of bob and weaved a little bit because I actually wrote down a question mark of how did you find PA after you went into your why medicine, but then you told me and you answered that question for me. And that was something I was looking for. So that was great. Got into some specifics about the program. I think you could have expanded on talking about the program more, which if you're interviewing somewhere, clearly you can talk more about that program specifically. That's your opportunity to talk about also what they have and the location and why you want to go there. But I felt like you were very personable. And this is one where I do think like you could slow down a little bit as a fast talker. That's hard for me to say because I do it too. But just taking a breath, slowing down for a moment and gathering yourself would be fine. I think you did a very good job for everyone watching. I don't know if y'all noticed this of interjecting like small anecdotes. That's a really good skill of being
Thank
able
you.
to share things just throughout your answers, like the anecdote of the OB kind of teaching you and showing you and how that stood out to you. Things like that are what help your interviewer connect with you and remember you. So, like for me
Mhm.
personally, that brought up, I remember when I was pregnant, the what is it? Sonographer. Whoa. Did that with my daughter and helped her, like, let her hold the wand and showed her what stuff
So
was.
cute.
And it was just so sweet. And so for me, thinking about, like, oh, like that could be something in the future that makes her want to do medicine. That's so, I've never thought
Mhm.
about that. That stood out to me because it gave me like a personal connection. So that's where, if you're sharing those stories and like those little things throughout, you can have those moments that help your interviewer just connect with you more. And you may
Okay,
not
I
know
like
that. Yeah. So I think you did really well there. All
that.
right,
Thanks.
let's move on to number two. So if you know you're an athlete, you have to tell somebody they can't play. It's interesting that felt challenged by this one because I wrote down that you like nailed it from the beginning because you
Oh,
said
thank
something.
you.
Yeah, you said something right at the beginning about if I'm in a leadership position, this is how I need to think about that. And that's exactly what this question's asking. If you are a leader, if you are in that role, how do you handle that type of responsibility for another person? So if we're thinking
Mhm.
about these questions, if we're thinking, why are they asking me this weird question that has nothing to do with medicine? Think about what quality, what aspect, characteristic they might be trying to pinpoint, which in this case is leadership, conflict resolution, that kind of stuff. So I think you did a good example of kind of showing ways you would think about it. Somebody asked about or answer structure. So in an MMI, because you have time, your answer for this one was 1 minute and 45 seconds. Because you have time, that gives you the luxury that a traditional interview does not of talking through your options. So if you're
Okay.
a chronic overthinker like me, you probably do this in your head without really realizing it. My husband and I have this debate because I'm one of the people who like has a million thoughts in my head at one time, and he's like very one track. And so we talk about like what that's, but thinking through kind of like you did of what are the reasons this person can't play? What are my options for telling them? Maybe that's the direction you go. I could meet them in
Right.
person to tell them. I could call a group meeting with other captains and I could seek guidance from the coach. I could seek guidance from another captain about what they would do just to make sure I'm handling it correctly and go that route. I could text them. I could email them. I could call them. How would they feel about all of those things? And you have, again, that luxury of being like, okay, if I texted them, maybe that would give them time to process it without us meeting face to face. And I offer to meet them afterwards after they've had some time to think about it. I don't necessarily want to catch them off guard at a bad time. So maybe I should preface this with, hey, is there a good time for us to talk about it? So just like thinking, like talking out loud through all of those things to the point that you ultimately make a decision.
Okay.
And that's
I
the
like
important part here too, is that you get to a point where you say, okay, after considering all of these things, I would first text them at a time that I felt like they wouldn't have anything going on that I knew about, wouldn't be in the middle of a class or a test or work, and just say, hey, something's come up about the last game. Can you call me when you get a second? When they call me, I'll give them the opportunity to meet in person. If they'd like to, I'll explain the situation in the way that you explain, very empathetically and trying to help them feel included if that situation allows, whatever, and go into those details. Does that make sense?
yes. That's very helpful. Thank you.
And this doesn't mean that anything's wrong with your answer. It's just how you might could polish it up a little bit if you're in
Yeah.
one of these scenarios. And the other thing I think in this situation, when you said, oh, I'm not an athlete, that's crazy. Me either. But is there a similar situation you've been in that you could parallel? And
Yeah, and there were definitely things I should have brought in.
okay. So you're feeling that a little bit. Okay. So yeah, so if you've had a situation similar that you've been in, you may want to bring that up. And this also comes back to our kind of aspect of thinking in a full circle model of, let's think about, as a PA, I'm going to be in a situation where I'm having to give feedback to staff, to maybe medical assistants or nurses that I work with. I'm going to have to work with, I'm going to have to give feedback to patients. I'm going to be in this situation where I am probably telling people things that they maybe don't want to hear. And so I do recognize and acknowledge that this is a skill and something that I need to make sure I'm continuing to work on.
For sure. Thank you.
Make sense? Just things to think about here. Okay, let's go to number 3. If I can read my handwriting. I honestly can't. Let me see what I typed. Oh, honesty is not the best policy. I hate this question. I think this question is so hard. And
Yeah.
honestly, don't even like asking it because I don't really want to talk about it. But it's one that I think is interesting because it's such a weird question. Like, why, what? Like you said, honesty
Right.
is the best policy. But I do think it makes you think a little bit. And I'm interested to see if anyone else has some insight into maybe experiences they've had. I think you answered it well. I think you navigated it well with explaining how you were thinking about it. Dementia patients, altered mental state status patients, things that it's not even necessarily that you're being dishonest, but maybe you're not correcting them. You're not correcting them
Mhm.
just to correct. I have a 7-year-old and we talk about that a lot of, you don't necessarily need to tell someone they're wrong if it doesn't really matter, kind of thing. And so that's harder to think about in an adult type setting. But
Right.
kind of like you, I do think you addressed it well. And I think this is one too where you can progress it into maybe thinking about some things that would happen in PA school or as a PA. It's okay to preemptively bring some stuff up and say, there are times that, to me personally, I feel like honesty is the only policy. So things like cheating, stealing,
Mhm.
breaking the law, like things that, anything that would harm a patient, anything that would,
Right.
be seen as unethical to me, like honesty is the only policy. If there are times where I think you said this, like it would hurt someone's feelings to be honest, or it's not necessary, we can maybe hold back and then think. So I use the example of, I don't think she watches a lot, but I don't think she's watching my mom. If she asks me like, hey, do you like this dress, and I don't, it doesn't do either of us any good for me to say that, because
Yeah.
she's wearing something she likes, unless I can tell she's like unsure about it and really doesn't like it. But if she like really likes it, why would I
Mhm.
just say no if it's not my personal style? I think same thing with like food. If a patient brings me cookies and they're terrible, I'm not going to tell them that. That
No.
I'm not going to do that. Or they're like not ones I don't like or whatever. And those situations where it doesn't harm anyone, maybe
Mhm.
you don't necessarily have to be honest. But again, there's no right answer here. This is strictly a question for you to talk through and think through and just show how your mind is working around this complex, difficult issue. I'm trying to think of the way you could do it wrong. I think the only way you could do it wrong is if you just walk in there and you're like, no, I'm just gonna be honest all the time. And you just don't even really consider it. You wouldn't want to do that. But your answer for this one was 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay.
Yes.
Me and my answers are so much shorter than they felt.
Really? Yeah, that's how it always is. That's how it is. All right, next question is, if you were any type of car, what would you be and why? These are so weird. But I like to ask
I
them
was
sometimes.
not expecting this.
Yeah, there's like I remember one time in a mock interview, I asked someone tree, and he answered, and he talked for a solid 7 minutes about what kind of tree he would
Wow.
be and why. And he just I had to stop him. I was like, that was great. Yeah, you've answered it. 7 minutes about what tree you would be. Like he just kept going and going. Tree, candy
Big
bar.
outdoor enthusiast.
Yeah, he knew a lot about trees. And so these questions, there are a couple of things. They are a way to judge just creativity and kind of your willingness to participate, and to give you a chance to learn something about you. Again, there's not really a wrong answer here. Another fun one is like piece of furniture. It could actually be anything. Color.
That's fun.
Yeah. So I like that you went straight to your answer. Like you knew what you were picking. Like you had
I
it in your mind.
honestly had no clue where that came from. There is no world in which if I had prepped an answer, I would have picked Pepe the truck from LeChevaux. But
That's
that's what I thought of in the moment.
just where it went. All right, all right. And yeah, this is thinking on your feet. And again, like this is one where you would have a couple minutes to think about it. Not saying you would pick a different
Yeah.
answer, but just to be like, okay, these are the things I can say. These questions to me, this is to me a strengths question where you're able to pick something that displays qualities and strengths that you hopefully also display or want to display. The one thing I would say with your answer, so this answer was short, it was 56 seconds. I would say, as you're giving me examples of or the strengths of Pepe, also show me examples of how you relate to that.
Sure.
Like saying there's a lot of things, but like it's strong and it can do a lot, but it's also compact. Being able to say, I'm from a small town, but I feel like I am able to also expand and learn about different areas, whatever. It's reliable. Like I see myself and I hope the others see me as someone who will do anything for them. Like I'm the one that they can call if they want somebody to pick them up, or if they need
Mhm.
something, I'm the one they come to. And I have this loyalty to my friends and family and patients, whatever. Just going into, this is your chance to show examples of how you exemplify some different things.
I like that.
Does
Okay.
that make sense of how, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So and that's where it goes down to, like, it doesn't matter what you pick, as long as you can pull out some things about it that you can relate to and expand on. All right. And then number 5 was, oh, you see the patient who is using someone else's medicine and wants you to prescribe it. I love that you had personal experience to pull from. The one
Oh
thing I
yeah.
would say, and I don't think you did this, you might have, so you're going to watch back and see because I don't remember exactly, but in this type of setting, I would make sure to provide context and a little bit of background of what you do, where you work, something.
Right. Okay.
Many MMIs are completely blinded, meaning that they know nothing about
Okay.
you. They haven't seen your application, nothing. So being able to say, I'm a medical assistant at a small rural clinic, or I work mostly with a geriatric population, whatever, giving that
Right.
context is helpful. And somebody had asked in the questions at one point, like, can we bring up a part of our story that's in your personal statement? Yeah, you can. The chances of the person interviewing you being the same person who thoroughly reviewed your application is very slim.
That's
And
good.
there's so many, and they probably don't remember. Like your application was 40 pages. So I
It's
doubt
long.
they sat down and looked through all of that. I bet they skimmed it or got like a one sheet kind of snapshot about you. So yeah, so you definitely want to give enough context so that everybody kind of knows what's going on. Somebody asked, are
Mhm.
you supposed to introduce yourself by name at each station or just in the initial introduction if they specifically ask, tell you about yourself? I would introduce yourself at everyone. And I also like for you to restate the prompt a little bit just to show that you understand it. Somebody asked that about the multiple part question. What if you forget the second or third part? Is it appropriate to ask them to repeat it or should you just go on? I would try to incorporate it. If you're still in the question, you don't necessarily have to go in order, but I would still try to incorporate it if you remember. And a lot of times you'll have the prompt on paper so that you're not
Oh,
necessarily having to remember. Sometimes it'll be on the door and you won't have it. So you'll have to kind of see how each situation goes. Let's see, going back to that one. But yeah, no, I think you used a good job of incorporating personal experience and explaining some of those options of how you would address it with the patient, the different ways this could be an issue, and ways that you'd want to make sure that they knew what was appropriate and how you would go about it, and in a way that like wasn't just making them feel bad or anything about what they were doing.
okay. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. Okay, I'll get to some of these questions in just a minute once we finish up here. And that one was 1 minute and 55 seconds. Yes.
Okay.
Oh my God. Okay. Number 6 was tell me about a time you've been overwhelmed and how you handled it. I really like that you were willing to be vulnerable and kind of share your background and kind of stuff you've been through. I think that's helpful. And that shows how you'll relate to patients who go through same things. And then you really, I think, did a good job of showing examples. And this probably, I would say, was one of your best answers. It was 2 minutes and 15 seconds. And then I'd written down, like, how does this relate to PA school? But you actually went there and talked about that. I did a good job. Yeah, yeah. I think really with this one, I don't know that I would add anything else. Let me look at exactly how it was asked just to make sure we didn't miss anything. How'd you handle it and what strategies did you use to get through it? Yeah, I feel like you really addressed that one fine. And that one's more looking at like stress management. If we're thinking about like, why did they ask us this? Just to see how
Hmm.
you're going to handle tough stuff. Because as we said in PA school, you're going to have similar situations that come up. All right. And then the last one, the box of cereal. These are such silly questions, but it can be like, tell a person how to brush their teeth, tell the person how to make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich or a ham and cheese sandwich.
Uh-huh.
And it's all about detail. I think somebody commented in there actually about I'd never thought about this. And this one does throw a lot of people off guard. They're like, open the box, pour it in. What do you mean? But it's thinking through each step. So for people watching, like I would encourage you just to think through stuff that you're doing. Like I can pick up this bottle of water and drink it, but if I'm telling someone to do it and assuming they have no idea and I'm having to tell them, I would say pick it up in your right hand, use your left hand to turn the lid to the left. That's counterclockwise. Lay the lid on the table. bring the bottle to your mouth, raise it. Like it sounds so dumb, but the whole point is just showing that you can pay attention to detail, that you can give instruction. Because sometimes with our patients, we do have to give very specific instructions. Sometimes with staff, we have to give instruction. And so that's what that type of question is trying to get at. But I know it's weird. So
I did a thing like that in like elementary school on how to tie your shoes, and I wrote, I think it was like a 4-page essay on how to tie your shoes. And so it's stuck with me since then, since he went through and tore apart everybody's essays in like fourth grade. And so those ones, it's always stuck with me since then. Thank you, Mr. Jorgensen.
same thing, same thing, same thing. All right, that's all right. So that was 7 questions. And while we didn't wait the whole 2 minutes, 5 minutes, all that, sometimes that's all you get is 7 questions at an interview and then you're done. So that's also where that goes back to, like, if you have more to add, if you have things that you can leave with them, go ahead and use that time to the best of your ability.
For sure.
Yeah, thank you so much for volunteering. I really appreciate it. And I think everyone in the chat is saying you did so great. Definitely keep us updated when you start hearing back, and we'll have our fingers crossed for you. You just interviewed in front
Thanks
of
for having me.
people, so it has to be easier with just a few. So
For sure. Thank you so much.
thank you. All right, I'm going to answer a few of y'all's questions that I'm seeing. Thank y'all for hyping up Kennedy. That's my favorite part of doing these, is just you guys like hyping each other up. I love it so much. Okay, let's see. I'm going to run through the ones I have not answered. Are MMIs always in a group setting? No, so you typically are one-on-one. Usually they are not a group. It's just that everyone's rotating through stations. I was asked, if we did not choose you today, why do you think, and why? Any tips? So to me, this is a weakness question of what do you think are the weaknesses on your application that would prevent them from accepting you. And this is your opportunity to address those and say why you don't think they're issues. So that's how I would go about it. We answered that one. If you're asked a really tough question in an interview about an area that you're not knowledgeable about, how should that be addressed? Should you attempt to answer? Is it best to admit you don't know? Can you ask to move on to the next question and come back to that question later? Yes, and maybe all of the above. So I think it's fine to take a second to think about a question. Take a moment, say, oh, I've never really thought about that before. See if you can think about it. Usually you shouldn't be asked anything that truly requires knowledge that you wouldn't have, if that makes sense. They're not going to be like, tell us how to do heart surgery. You don't know how to do that. I don't know how to do that. So it should be stuff that you can at least figure out. But if you truly don't know, I think it's better to say you don't know than to dig a hole that you can't get out of. I remember at my interview, there was someone who, oh gosh, what year was it? 2011. That was my interview, and she ended up being the class after me. She didn't get in my year, but she was asked about some type of political health care reform. Because she like told us all of this right after the interview too, while we were all waiting for our interview, which I would not do that either. And she like said she didn't know what it was, so she just started talking about it. And I think from what she told me, she just dug a really big hole that I don't think she could get out of. Where she probably should have just said, that's not something I'm familiar with. Let me find out more about it. So you do have to play those situations out a little bit. Is it okay to add how this may relate to you later as a PA? Yeah, I highly recommend doing that. Love doing that. How should I approach questions that do not give you a whole story to address the prompt and leave you to interpret the rest of the situation? The question you asked about the player being sat out. Yeah, so a lot of questions will be like that. There are a lot of questions where you get to use your own discretion it's like a choose your own adventure of like where that question goes. Almost all questions can be interpreted in your own way. One of the questions I really love asking is, tell me about a situation with a difficult patient, because my answers that I get are so drastically different. I'll have people talk about the patient who's mad and never happy about anything and just difficult in that way. And then I'll have people talk about the patient who has a really tough diagnosis, that's a really sad case, that's difficult on a more emotional level. So there's a lot of room for interpretation here, and a lot of MMI will leave room for like speculation that you have to then talk through these situations. So if they had poor academics, this is what I would recommend. If they had substance abuse, this is what I recommend. If they weren't a good sport, this is what I recommend. If, somebody else was a better player and they weren't, what's the word, doing workouts enough, that's what I'd talk about. So you have the time to really explore a lot of those options. All right, we've gotten out a lot of these. So I asked, would I be considered geriatric in a cohort if I'm 35? The average age, I need to see what it is most recently, that I looked at last time was 28 for PA school. And we had multiple people in our 30s. I was the younger one in my class. Our oldest person was 41. The class after me had someone in it who was 51. So I wouldn't worry about that at all. Someone did just call me old on Reddit last week, so that was fun. But I'm 35. I am old for a lot of y'all. So I'm cool with that. But yeah, no, I think you'll find people in your same age range. And yeah, I don't feel like age really matters in PA school or would like make you not qualified at all. Oh wow! Someone has an interview tomorrow with a program I got accepted to, but did start last year. Should I mention it in the interview or just ask what I have? If asked, what I've done since last year? Yeah, I would just emphasize like what you have done in the past year and make sure that like they know what you've been doing since then. Does a later interview date, such as December, equal a lesser chance of getting in compared to August or September? If they have rolling admissions, there's probably less spots. If they don't have rolling, then maybe you have a little bit better chance. But a lot of schools are already offering interviews and then acceptances. All right. If we are applying while still in undergrad during senior year, is this seen as a weakness? And if so, how should I address it? So don't think about it as a weakness. I did that and I did have some insecurity about it just because I felt kind of like the one who feels like they're too old to apply to PA school. I feel like I was too young. Like they're not going to want me. I'm so young. And this just is where schools are looking for people of all different types, all ages, everything. Like I don't think some to say age is just a number, but like it really is. And as long as you've done what you're supposed to do and you feel ready, then I wouldn't let that hold you back, and just know that people get in right out of undergrad or while they're still in undergrad. People get in at 30, 40, 50 later on. And that's just how this profession goes. I would not consider that a weakness. I would just focus on the things that you have done, focus on your positives, your strengths, your experiences that you do have, and let those shine. And the schools may recognize how much you've done for where you're at. All right, I see people have interviews tomorrow, which is awesome. And Friday, good luck, Sarah. I want to say good luck to everyone. Good luck, Kiana. Good luck to everyone. Oh no, good luck, Cedra. Like, good luck to everyone. Let us know how you do. I'll be waiting to hear, and make sure you follow us for all the PA week fun that will be starting tomorrow. Thank you guys for joining, and I really appreciate. Give it up for Kennedy again for being such a great sport and for participating with us. But y'all are awesome. I hope everyone has a good night. Bye, guys.